to day one of the Centre Court MBA Festival with Poets and Quants. This is our first festival of 2024, and it's great to have all of you with us. My name is Matt Simmons, and for the next 2 days with my co-host John Byrne, we'll be bringing you the insights, the advice, and even the edited jokes of the senior staff at the world's leading business schools to help you with your own journey of both personal and professional development, making an informed decision about pursuing an MBA, and of course getting great advice from the decision makers about how to secure your place in the MBA classroom of one of these top schools. So in the 2 days that follow, there's an array of panels and fireside chats. We're looking both at admissions, of course, and then a deep dive into the programs. In 90 minutes, I'll be welcoming program directors from 4 great schools. Each panel is then followed by individual chats and breakout sessions. So you'll then be able to address those questions. But I'll keep an eye on the Q&A as we go, because obviously everything that you'll be hearing might stimulate some great questions. So we have more of an admissions focus to get the festival started, and a wonderful panel. It's always a pleasure to welcome Charlotte Russell-Green. Charlotte is the head of MBA recruitment and admissions at the Judge School of Business at the University of Cambridge on what she tells me is a very bright and sunny day. Please bring that sunshine with you, Charlotte. And perhaps that's equally true just down the road in central London. David Simpson, the recruitment and admissions director of both the MBA and the Masters in Finance at the London Business School. The temperature did drop as we move across to the Midwest, but it's lovely to have with us Andrea McHale. Andrea, perhaps I should refer to her as Dr. McHale, given that she has her DBA, but she's the Director of Admissions for the full-time and global MBA at the Ross School at the University of Michigan. And also with us, Jared Liu. Jared is the Senior Associate Director of Admissions at the Yale School of Management. So 4 wonderful, wonderful schools. I know 4 great people. And let's get started. Perhaps just a brief introduction of each of your institutions. And Charlotte, we all know the University of Cambridge, but everybody also knows the Judge Business School. Tell us a little bit about the school, its place within the wider university, its reputation, that fantastic ecosystem of entrepreneurship and science.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Matt. It's really lovely to see you again, and I'm really excited to be on this panel today. And also hello to my other colleagues at other business schools today. I'm really happy to be here. Now, our 1-year programme, we have a 1-year full-time MBA at Cambridge. And the programme offers a unique opportunity to earn an MBA from the world-renowned University of Cambridge, where you immerse yourself in the rigorous and practical curriculum that we offer here. And it's tailored, you can also tailor it to your interests and goals, whether that is, you talked about entrepreneurship or technology, but it could also be consulting or finance, healthcare, sustainable business, energy, environment, or the arts. But also during your time here, you'll collaborate with an experienced international cohort and gain over 400 hours of practical experience. And that doesn't include the 2 live consulting projects that we have or the internship opportunities. It's a really highly experiential MBA where the curriculum has been crafted to provide you with that opportunity to apply everything that you're learning in the classroom through real life business experiences. But most importantly, I'll keep it brief, it's going to develop you into an agile, empathetic and collaborative leader that is going to, you're going to be able to tackle today's dynamic business landscape. As I said, I'm excited to be here and join the panel today.
Great. And Charlotte, I often encourage our viewers at Centre Court to think about who might be sitting next to them in the MBA classroom. But a slightly different question for you. Who might be sitting next to them at dinner at Judge within the University of Cambridge?
Exactly. And I think that's the real plus to the MBA at Cambridge, is you have obviously the really diverse network within the MBA. But when you come to Cambridge to do an MBA, you're part of history at Cambridge, and you do become a member of one of the Cambridge colleges. So when you're dining in a Harry Potter style dining room, you could be sat next to someone studying astrophysics or anthropology, a wide variety of topics, and you're never going to get that opportunity anywhere else.
Right. Andrea, of course, the Ross School within the University of Michigan, which again implies an extraordinary level of expertise, research across the entire institution, and one of the biggest football fields, I think, in the country. But tell us about Ross, and I would love you to just mention the MAP program, because I know the students are just on the MAP.
Thank you, Matt, and super excited to be with all of our panelists today. Andrea McHale with the Ross School of Business. I support the full-time MBA program, but we do have 5 total MBA paths, and each of them have a MAP component to that, so I will definitely share about that. So our value system is really, we want to build business leaders, and we're centered around developing that through action-based learning. So our MAP project is that capstone event through action-based learning, and you work with an employer for 7 weeks. It's part of your module of a semester. Many of our first-year MBAs are either on site right now with an employer or just returning from that session, and they'll be working on a real project with real deliverables to a C-suite team. So I think that's kind of what we encompass through our centers, our institutes, our MAP projects, our global initiatives, is action-based learning. Of course, in our curriculum, you will be learning through cases, but really we try to bring that to life as much as possible in that experiential learning.
Right.
In addition to, oh, sorry. In addition to that, we have a number of different concentration paths as well as dual degree programs. And within Ross, we try to focus as much on flexibility to individualize your program experience as possible. You are able to take up to 10 elective credits through one of our 110 top-ranked graduate programs across the University of Michigan. So really just a wonderful full-time MBA program curriculum, very dynamic experience on the experiential side. So thank you, Matt.
No, great. And later on, Andrea, I'm going to ask you the advice you give on the first day of the program, because with so many options, prioritizing your time, but bringing all that curiosity. So, there we have the Ross students going out to the world. But David, of course, the world comes to London and London Business School. I think that sort of global pedigree is very much part of the program. Tell us about LBS.
Great, thanks, Matt. Great to see everybody here. So our aim is to have a profound impact on the way the world does business and the way that business impacts the world. We're bringing the world to London, as you say, making the most of it. So really leveraging out that London advantage in terms of employers, speakers, activities, and just life in an amazing city. We also have a number of global experiences within the programs. So whether it's going anywhere around the world to one of about 10 plus different choices of experience, or an exchange to another school if you're sitting here right now thinking, well, I want this, but I also want this. Our MBA is a 15 to 21 month flexible program. You make that decision when you're in the program. So if you get some great opportunities, or there are family reasons to graduate earlier than the 2 years, you can use that jumping off point in order to do that. We're also just introducing next year, so 2025, a brand new 1-year MBA with a prerequisite. So an MBA designed for people who have already done a top Masters in Management earlier in their career, gone away to work for a bit, and then want to come back and build on that. So we're just working that out right now, but it's really exciting, and that's going to become one of my programs as well. We have the Masters in Finance program, which is fairly unique. Well, I say fairly unique. There's at least one other one within the panel of a post-experience master's program specializing in finance. Again, leveraging our London location. And then we have a stack of executive programs and graduate master's programs as well for those who are either at a later or earlier stage of their career.
Right. They always say, David, to ask a busy person to take on a new project. So I'm glad that they've also put the 1-year program on your plate as well. We'll be talking more about that, but I'd love to bring in Jared. Jared, Yale, we've talked about a sense of purpose or mission, which I think is something that comes across very strongly at the School of Management at Yale.
Perfect. Yeah. And maybe I'll also just say it's an honor to be here with such a distinguished panel. So thank you to all of you, and thank you, Matt, for the invitation. So that's exactly, I think, exactly where to start, which is the mission of the school, which is to educate leaders for business and society. And it's fairly unique for a school to still have its founding mission. And I think that speaks a lot to just how core that is to everyone who's part of the school. And it's one of the things that I love when I talk with alumni is how they feel that the mission of the school still transcends from their time when they were at Yale. So I'll say, I think there are a lot of different ways to think about what this mission means. To me, it means this is about you, the candidate, the students, and it's really about, what it is that you do, what it is, or how we can, help you bridge to what it is that you want to do, and aligning a program that fits you. And so there are a range of ways in which you can join the program, from literally having 0 years of work experience. We have a program specifically called Silver Scholars for folks coming right from undergraduate. The full-time MBA is our flagship program. You can be already have an MBA and be looking to have more of a finishing experience through an MAM. You can have an executive MBA and be mid-career professional. You could be much later in your career and do an executive education. Again, the flagship program is the 2-year general MBA, and we really do believe that that sort of balance of rigidity in that first-year core and flexibility with electives and how you engage across the university is really a training that, again, goes back to what do you need individually to make this experience about you and fulfill that mission to both business and society.
Well, it's great that all 4 of you have made it so much about the individual and finding that alignment, because the opportunities that you then offer to all of them. Charlotte, as we think about your admissions requirements, of course, you want to see their academic credentials. There will be test scores in there. But given the intensity, that 1 year, and you're offering so much in that year, are there other characteristics that you then look for to be able to really embrace and optimize all of the opportunities that they will have?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're hinting to here is that kind of fit. A candidate, we're looking for a certain fit. They are looking for a certain fit. It's absolutely a two-way street. So first of all, hats off to everyone who is joining today and who is watching after this has gone out, because you're absolutely doing the right thing by getting to know all the different programs and getting as much information as possible. So you have my utmost respect, and carry on, because you're doing the right thing. Fit is a two-way street. Now, when we're talking about soft skills, business schools are going to talk about, resilience. They're going to talk about self-awareness and reflection and critical thinking, and having, being a collaborative and empathetic leader, all of these skills. But how do you show that in an application, right? Now, there are some quick wins. There's a quick win I'd like to talk about here that is a common mistake that I see, where people in their resume or their CV, they put the current role that they're in for a longer period of time, whereas actually they've been promoted a few times during that time. And we want to see that in your resume. We want to see that progression, because that is showing, that you have those soft skills that, companies look for, appreciate. They're seeing potential in you. And we want to see that career ladder. So you might think it looks better to be in a more senior position for longer, but we want to see that progression. So that's a quick win that you can do on your resume. But when we're talking about those soft skills, you need to be thinking about the answers to your essays, because this is where you can really showcase those soft skills. And I think, absolutely big yourself up in your application. Show us your highlights. We want to know where you've done well. But in your essays, please don't be scared of talking about your failures, because there is so much learning that can be taken from failures. We want to know about that professional moment that still haunts you to this day and affects how you behave now as a leader at work, because that shows real self-awareness and real self-reflection. It shows that you can be developed, you can be coached, that you can be adaptable and agile and change the way that you think and be empathetic with yourself, and therefore more likely to be an empathetic, dynamic leader. This is the moment where you can talk about a failure, a real key failure, because you can't have failure without success. And it's those key learning moments that really showcase that portfolio of soft skills that we're looking for.
Well, Andrea, let me stay with the theme that Charlotte has introduced, because on the one hand, of course, we want to shine in our application to Ross, but having that self-awareness and maybe just the openness to learn. If we had all the answers, why would we need to possibly go to business school? So again, perhaps your advice to be able to both capture, that potential, but how you're approaching, coming to business school at Ross with a very open mind.
Yeah, all of Charlotte's recommendations are like spot on in terms of what I would also offer in suggestion. But another thing too is not everyone has a linear business path. They did not do their undergraduate degree in business and then come and work for 5 years, then go right into an MBA. I think the key in terms of those soft interpersonal skills or those leadership skills are what is transferable in your experiences and how do you bring that to light within your application. So utilizing your essays, being really intentional with the examples that you provide within an evaluative interview is also going to be important. Typically, many of the programs, Ross included, we ask behavioral-based questions in those interviews. And being able to provide it as very specific example. I always say to prospective students, paint a picture in your interviewer's mind so that they can understand the situation that you were in, whether it be a failure or a challenge that you were able to overcome, or the biggest achievement of your career. And that can be within engineering, education, business. We understand what that took in terms of those leadership competencies, and we can understand the fit within the program. So I feel like that's one other area to kind of maintain, and be true to yourself. We really do. We really focus on authenticity, and anytime that you can bring your authentic self to your application, which tends to be a lot of numbers and data, we really appreciate. And being vulnerable through failure or through adversity is one way to showcase that authenticity.
Right. Now, whether in the interview, David, or in the application itself, Andrea talks about be specific, give the example that lies behind it. So, I might be inclined to say, oh, I've got a global mindset, perfect for London Business School, or I'm very analytical, my people skills. What's the next step to then give you and your colleagues and admissions a tangible example or demonstration of the skills that you're describing?
So it's a balance, isn't it? You have to use what's in front of you in an application. We're all going to ask slightly different questions throughout our applications. And sometimes it's through essays, sometimes it's through the shorter form questions. You have to think, what do I really need to tell people? What great experiences or aspects of my personality do I want to put across? But then it has to fit. And if it doesn't fit in the application, don't try and shoehorn it in because it will look bad. Relax into it, the fact that the application's to get you an interview. An interview is where you make sure that you manage the process to put across those great stories. And also within the applications, look out for the opportunities, because sometimes they come in those much smaller questions, or you get an opportunity to squeeze in the example of why you fit to that particular school. And remember to personalize it. Remember that what you're saying for Michigan Ross will be very different potentially to what you might say for London Business School, depending on our values, depending on what we do, depending on kind of right down to the sort of employment routes out from business school as well. So you've got to juggle all of this whilst answering all of the questions. But at the same time, don't overcomplicate it too much. You've got to tell your story. So I always say prepare, research, but then relax into it and make sure that you're being you.
Right. Now, we've already brought up the applications themselves. We mentioned essays, there's the resume. Jared, this idea of a holistic approach, perhaps you can sort of bring all of those pieces of the puzzle together and just, for the viewers, it's not one item that gets you in or that closes the door on you, how you and your colleagues are looking at all of these elements and combined.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to get ahead of the word holistic, because I think it's a term that candidates hear a lot, and we use a lot for good reason. There are a number of things we look at, and I think oftentimes on the candidate side, they can think it comes down to one or two things that really outweigh an application. I like to think of this as, we're trying to get to a yes. We're rooting for a candidate. We're trying to get them to this experience. And so, I think exactly as all the panelists have said, there are a number of things we're looking for. And, to the extent that you can be genuine and to show us those strengths, do that. I'll even say, I think oftentimes candidates, particularly when they're current students, talk about having imposter syndrome. They're surrounded by such talent. And I will tell you, I often feel an imposter syndrome when I'm reading applications, because you've all done amazing things. And so to the extent that I can, frame this out for anyone who feels that they're non-traditional in some sense, and I think Andrea said this, that many of you may not feel like you have a linear path to business school, like you feel that you are non-traditional in some way. And so think of it in terms of how are you going to contribute to the learning community, academically, professionally, what do you bring to the peer environment? What are those resources that you're taking advantage of? And those are all, sort of these, broader questions that you can answer in your application to help the committee understand who you will be as a student, how you will be in recruiting. But we're hopefully many of us were told, or many of us probably were told when we were going through undergraduate university, to focus on what we love, right? Don't take the classes that we wanted to sort of stock out what the job was that we wanted. And so I think what you'll find is that these programs value the same thing. You may not have a linear path here. You may not be that traditional candidate in the exact sense of it, but we value what you bring to the learning community. So help us to understand what those things are and who you'll be in the community.
Perhaps, Charlotte, in doing the research, a candidate will come across the class profile that you might publish that shows, this wonderful diversity, international students from 50, 60 countries around the world, the gender balance that schools are achieving in those classrooms. But also, is there a word of caution, that those profiles can be reductive because it might share an average GMAT or GRE score or a GPA, and candidates start to panic and say, I don't have that particular data point or not to that level. And there's no perfect candidate, or maybe that incoming profile class shot. How would you put it in the context of the diversity that you're looking for?
Yeah, I agree. And I think Jared talked about this, that we're rooting for a yes. And we really are. I do always precursor any kind of presentation that I do when I'm showing the class profile with, this is an average. We have people with less and we have people with more. It is a reason why we don't have a minimum GMAT score. We try to keep things quite vague in that area because it can cause a lot of anxiety. And again, that kind of, like Jared talked about, that imposter syndrome. So yeah, I suppose the thing to bear in mind is, they are averages. And the best thing that you can do if you're not sure is to reach out, so come and speak to us at events. We have so many events that we do virtually. We have events that we do in person. You can also contact us via email. If you're not sure about your profile, you're not sure about your GMAT or your GRE score, you can contact us and you can ask us, this is what we are here for. We have people here to help answer your questions, and we are always rooting for a yes. We want to see the best in people. When we're reading an application, we want to kind of look for the reasons to admit.
I think for the next panels, I'll mention to my colleagues at Centre Court that we might call it, we're here to get to yes. And all of you have the word admissions in your titles. It's not, turning people down. It's looking for great reasons to admit them into the program. Andrea, as we are starting 2024, we've seen a transfer. We've had the old GMAT and GRE tests being phased out. They're still valid for 5 years, but new tests being introduced. That will create some anxiety as the new tests. Perhaps two things: how you place a standardized test within that overall framework, and just a few thoughts on how perhaps this year of transition you're going to adapt to new sets of scores.
Yeah, I think that question is two-part. One, with the new test format, both the abbreviated GRE and the GMAT focus, Ross is completely embracing. We understand on the GMAT focus side, there is a different scoring rubric. We're really utilizing percentiles across the board to assess that standardized test for all of our applicants. Again, to be fair, we're trying to create as much equity as possible when we're doing this application process and understanding those scoring frameworks. Utilizing the percentiles, at least within Ross, has been the best approach for us. In addition to that, in terms of we're test optional. We do want every single applicant to be able to substantiate their academic readiness for an MBA. A standardized test is an ideal way to do that. However, we do have a statement of academic readiness if you are submitting without a standardized test score, particularly focusing on the quantitative readiness of the rigor of an MBA. So yes, it is an important part, but it's not even required within our application framework. And there are alternative ways to reflect your academic readiness. So I think that's really important to think about. And that brings back to Jared's point about holistic review. We're looking at the applicant holistically. We do, though, need to have some sense of understanding and comfort with bringing forth an applicant that they're going to be able to be successful in the MBA program. And so just thinking of ways that how do you showcase that within your application, particularly if you're someone that falls in below the average range of your ideal program, or if you are putting forth an application that is not submitting a standardized test score.
Right. Now, wanting all of those candidates to thrive and to flourish, they're sharing with you, and a mirror that you're holding up through the application process, where business school fits in the next stages of personal and professional development. So, sometimes, David, we can be very focused on, well, I want to work in this company and have this job title. What is it that you're trying to gauge of, where the London Business School MBA will fit in the trajectory of any individual? Do they have to have it all worked out?
Yeah, so at London Business School on the MBA, we have a very practical essay question. It's about what you did before, what you hope to do in the future, and how we might help with that journey. I always think there's a range. You need to be ambitious, driven, but you also need to be realistic about what's possible. You need to understand what's out there. So if we're asking you what kind of job, what kind of company, make sure you know what you're talking about. There's plenty of information out there. But no, it's not a contract. So give a general sense of direction or answer the question, and I'll talk to you in a year's time when you've been through a summer internship or club events, or you've changed track 4 times through your choice or through the necessity of markets being up and down. So, if it's not a great time for consulting, it will be a great time for something else, or it may be that you take a route in. So you've got to be open-minded, and you've got to understand things. You've got to understand local markets as much as possible. For London Business School students, many people are moving to access London, but at the same time, give themselves the opportunities in the future to go home or go to a third country. And it may be that certainly the more flexibility and more agility you have, geographic agility, then the closer the opportunities might align with sort of companies and profiles you're most looking for. So it's just assessing what's available, who you are, a lot of reflection and self-awareness, and take what's on offer from careers teams. We all spend a lot of money putting together amazing teams of people who can help people to achieve the best opportunities that are available to them by talking to recruiters, by helping you to prepare for those interviews, whatever it might be. It's a key part of the school, and one that you should really research when you're finding out about us as well. So it's that full picture. Be joined up, be reflective, be self-aware.
Right. Now, it's like being a kid in a candy store. 4 world-class MBA programs, 4 wonderful, wonderful institutions. So I'll take one of this and one of this and one. It would be a fantastic experience for any of our viewers. But Jared, when we talk about FIT, a school that still holds to the mission statement that you began with, what is your advice to candidates as they're thinking about where they will flourish. You've got New York on your doorstep for opportunities that will give. There are other aspects that the School of Management is, deeply recognized for around nonprofit. So what do you advise to really find the right environment to thrive?
Yeah, and let me think about this in terms of candidates' applications specifically too, because I think oftentimes candidates want to tell us a linear story of, I worked in A, I want to do B, therefore I'll study AB, or A plus B. Maybe that's the more mathematically accurate statement. And that doesn't have to be the case. In fact, about 3/4 of our students make a pivot when we look at what did they do industry-wise pre-MBA to what did they do post-MBA. And actually, I'll let you behind the curtain a little bit, if you will. We also track what do you say on your application you want to do versus what do you actually do? And about 60% of candidates make a pivot. And so if we were very skeptical, cynical people, we would say candidates are lying to us. But we don't say that, right? Instead, we're excited. That's a really thrilling aspect, that you're inspired to move in these different directions, that an MBA gives you the tools to make those, on paper, very dramatic shifts from, one industry to the next, or something perhaps that on paper you didn't have the sort of the background for. Of course, we don't think that's the case. We think you did have the background. You were a leader, you were an impact maker, and we were able to help you bridge that. And so I think, unfortunately, there is this belief sometimes for candidates that they have to follow this very linear role for a specific company, for a specific role, for a specific path. And just I want you to know, that is not the case. It doesn't have to be your case. Some folks will go with something very traditional. But through the academic program, through the network, through the connections that you make through these programs, you will have a lot of opportunity. So definitely, I'll say invest in yourself, because this is, really potentially the most impactful 1 year, 2 years of your life.
Right. Jared had mentioned, Charlotte, the Silver Scholars Program available at Yale to apply in your senior year of college. But in the judge class, I think that the average age is probably closer to 30 than it is to 24, 25. Is there a right time? And how do you encourage individuals to think about, yes, business school, but why now versus in a year or two?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we do get asked this, and our average every year is always years of experience is always 6, and average age is always 29. We used to have a minimum of 3 years work experience requirement, and we reduced it to 2 years because actually, people can achieve quite a lot in 2 years, especially if you've been through a graduate program or a rotational program. And you can have an awful lot to bring to the table with 2 years of experience. But the average is just the average, the way that we are. I think in Europe and 1 year programs, people tend to opt for a 1 year program when they have a little bit more experience, because they don't necessarily want to take the 2 years out of work. So that's just how it generally works for us. But when it comes to ascertaining whether it's the right time, it's a challenging question, because I think what you need to be thinking about is, it's a big investment in yourself. So again, events like this are great. Come to events like this. Once you've kind of narrowed down which schools you're interested in, look into those schools more. Look at the alumni network. How much experience do the average class members have? Take a look at those things and kind of ascertain, where, what is it that you want to do. And if it's quite a challenging jump, then think, potentially, I don't have leadership or managerial experience yet. Maybe I need to stay in this role and just get a little bit of experience here before I, leap into doing an MBA, because the role that I want to go into post MBA is actually quite a challenging transition, and I'm going to benefit more from that experience before I even start. But it's a difficult question to answer, Matt, because it's so dependent on what experience each person has. I would say that, yeah, having someone that you trust, whether it's a mentor or someone who's going to give you really honest but critical feedback, but fair feedback, is going to look at your CV and talk to you about what your goals are and really give you that feedback as to whether it is the right time to take that time out and go for it, or whether you need to wait a year or two.
Right. Now, you've emphasized, Charlotte, the idea of making an investment in yourself. And often, Andrea, we think about a year, 2 years at business school, and the ROI of that investment. That's measured by, the great starting salaries that Ross graduates are getting out of school. Perhaps there's, greater levels of responsibility. What are some of the things that maybe don't get captured in that simple ROI model in terms of self-confidence, new networks? What are some of the things that you think should be included in that ROI?
You definitely mentioned two of them. I mean, so outside of the trajectory of your career, either enhancing that or making that pivot and career change into business that an MBA allows you to see through, is the alumni network that you're building out, your MBA peer network, which will become your confidants, your advisors, the people that you rely on as you go into your careers and start to make transitions and pivots. That value is, I always say, invaluable. It's the time of your life that you really focus in on making the most of your education that you may not have understood the value of when you were younger doing your undergraduate program or even graduate program post-undergrad. So those are two of the things. Also, just the fact that you have this post-undergraduate work experience and you get to elevate that experience within that curriculum path, and that enriches your outcomes, your learning, and your development. That retention piece, there's something to be said about a graduate student going back after working, and the knowledge that they gain from that is that ROI as well. I mean, you're putting an investment in yourself.
Right. David, with your colleagues in admissions at LBS, you're the first people to meet the candidate and the belief that you show in them, offering them a place, and they show up, day one, but perhaps nervous at the end, meeting the rest of their classmates. Is it tangible when you then see them 15 or 21 months later, the journey that they've shared with you from that candidate and the potential that you saw in them, and then this self-confident individual as they graduate?
Yeah, totally. I mean, the important words there, potential, that's what we're looking for. So if you look at the age experience question, we're looking for people with intellectual horsepower and potential, and the experience on top of that can vary hugely. But yeah, you see some people come in and you think, confidence is something that you will get out of this experience if you open yourself up to it. And for others, actually, it's the opposite. Just putting people in their place a little bit, perhaps. I won't talk about sort of nationality trends, but when you're in that classroom and the professors are cold calling and it's like an orchestra with their expectations, people are managed and they're self-managing from within as well. So if you recruit a class of great people, they will help encourage others to be the best they can be. So it will be the students as well as the professors and the careers teams and the coaches and the mentors who will say to you, this is how you can be better. This is how you can achieve. So giving the confidence, or perhaps knocking off the edges of people who have always been the best at everything they've done and need a touch of humility. Personally, I think during our process, we're looking to narrow that scope down a bit, because at the end of the day, you have to have enough confidence in yourself to hit the ground running quite quickly, take advantage. But being surrounded by good people who are there to help and are interested in you makes a big difference. Yeah, I love alumni panels. We had an event on Saturday, an open day for the MBAs, and a couple of alumni telling their stories, someone who's switching from medicine and someone coming in from a very corporate business environment, and they both had very different stories to tell, and they were just shining. They were shining with the excitement for the times they'd had and what they're doing now and how they're putting things into practice. But it really is a unique period of your career and your life that will change you, change the way you think, change the way you make decisions, change your confidence, and just make you a very well-rounded human being if you weren't before.
If Yale was organizing an alumni panel, as LBS had last weekend, Jared, if they just sort of thought, 5 years, 10 years ago when they finished the Yale MBA program, what do they share? What are those memorable moments beyond the career advancement and everything they've gone on to achieve? Some of the feedback that they give you.
Yeah, and I'm even thinking about the last question in that, like I feel like the worst part of my job is that oftentimes I spend all this time with prospective students and then I see them at graduation, and so I miss oftentimes that 2 years in between, and sometimes get to spend a little bit more time with alumni. So it's personally something that I sort of make a mental note. It's like I need to have lunch with those current students, just sort of check in on their journey, because they are they're growing in these tremendous ways. But I think to your question about how they present as alumni, I think it really goes back to the mission. I think I'd start off saying, one of the things that I love so much is when alumni talk about how the mission and how the school really presented in that way is still how the students coming out current day are presenting the mission. And they really feel there's a resonance there. And so I think what you'll see is that they're doing things across so many industries, right? They are certainly in very traditional finance and consulting roles, although sometimes very nuanced, right? They might be doing microeconomic development loans or environmental consulting. And there's going to be someone there who's doing government and thinking about impact investing, and someone who, is working in the nonprofit space, and someone who's leading arts management. And so they all are combined by this larger belief that ultimately our customer is society. Ultimately, we're trying to raise the level for all of us. And it's not just about brand. It's not about title. It's not about salary. It's about addressing that larger customer of the society. I love talking with alumni, and sort of hearing about what that growth journey has been for them.
Well, I'm going to stay with this theme because I think alumni are such extraordinary ambassadors as they share their experience. But, Charlotte, we could say, well, you'll have dinner with astrophysicists who'll be these intense consulting projects and maybe a Sunday afternoon just punting on the River Cam. But then we can share all of that with them, but then they get to live it. So as they look back on their judge experience, again, what are the sort of things that they share with you?
Yeah, I think that the main highlights that we hear from our alums, all the time is that two main highlights really. The people is the main thing that we hear, the network that they build upon, because I think what you get at Cambridge is our class is between 200 to 250 every year, and it provides that environment within the MBA program to build meaningful relationships with your classmates. You're going to get to know everyone in the class, work with everyone at least once, have an identity within the class, and have a network that you can genuinely call on 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the line. I need help with this. Actually, I've pivoted out of consulting. I'm going to start my own business. I need some advice from some colleague who owned a family business or started their own startup. I want to think about going into the incubator at Cambridge. How do I do that? Building those meaningful relationships with your classmates just within the class. But then you get that wider network that the college system and the wider university provides through extracurriculars. You can join the debate team, you can do rowing, you can do punting on the cam, so many different extracurriculars that expand your network outside of the MBA. You're part of Cambridge University's network and history. But also the other highlight that we get from our alums is the projects that we have on the program. We have, for a 1-year program, we have 2 live consulting projects, and we also have an internship opportunity as well. And these are invaluable experiences to our alums. They reflect on them throughout their career, 2, 5, 10 years down the line. They've provided fantastic corporate exposure, expanding the network again, building that spider web of network of contacts. post MBA, but also just a real kind of personal development opportunity as well. You know, David touched upon, you know, it's going to change you. This MBA is going to change everything about who you are. It's going to develop you professionally, but also personally, and provide you with so many different opportunities. And I think the experiential learning that we provide is a real highlight, as well as the people that you meet while you're here.
So, Andrea, alumni, an extraordinary touch point for any candidate to get a better sense of the institution. Where else do you like to point them in terms of events that you might be hosting virtually on the campus? Just ways that our viewers can find out more about Ross.
Definitely event programming. So this webinar is a great example of the outreach that an admissions team does to our prospective student base. But individually, program-wise, we host a number of webinars, workshops, sessions, both in person within some of our main metro regions where we recruit from, as well as in-person programming on campus in Ann Arbor. So as you narrow down program, if you identify Ross as a potential fit, I highly encourage you to take that journey. Start attending events with us in a larger setting with multiple programs, and then start those individual journey paths. It will allow you to make an informed decision, and I highly encourage it. Alumni are a big part of our in-person programming, so you'll be able to get to network with a number of Ross alums as well.
Right. One of our viewers has asked if LBS is organizing alumni panels every weekend. Hope you're not at school every weekend. As you know, my tendency is always to ask you the unscripted questions. Jared said earlier he's going to promise himself that in the next 12 months, going for lunch with the students whose stories he's been following from day one. So, David, what are you going to commit to in the next 12 months? Something at London Business School that you want to experience, whether it's a class, just one of those moments that you love about the school, and you're going to promise to yourself that you're going to do it in the next year before things get busy with the one-year program.
Oh my goodness, what am I going to promise myself? Well, I mean, I'm stealing that idea of connecting with students more regularly, but also alumni as well. I think for me, though, I'll pick attending some of the classes. So, and some more of the guest lectures and things going on. So tonight, Professor Andrew Scott's doing an event based around his latest book launch, and there's some really interesting material about the length of our careers and the diversity and the planning we need to do. So I think it's more on the content side. We talk about what's amazing and what's on offer, and I keep seeing lists of new electives that are coming in for next year. Thinking, I really must make sure I go to that, and then you don't get the chance, something happens. So I will commit to going to more of the student and faculty generated content over the next year or so. There you go. Hold me to that, Matt. Ask me in a year what I went to and what was best.
Great. And Jared, we know that lunch will be on your agenda. Just one other great way that you think any of our candidates can reach out to the team at Yale School of Management to find out more and think about next steps.
Yeah, perfect. And I'll say just on that, I share the same feeling about going to more, programs, experiences, lectures. Went to an amazing one the other day with someone who does data analytics for an MBA team, National Basketball Association team. And I feel like that helped me to draw up my March Madness brackets for anyone who's in the US and actively following college basketball, put it to use right away. Maybe not the most productive use of time, but, very much passion project. I think this is a really great question, Matt. Thank you for asking this, because I think oftentimes candidates feel that they are being evaluated across their entire journeys. And so we see a lot of candidates who we'll call them stealth candidates, if you will. And I'm not sure there's a real term for this, but we don't know you exist until the day you press submit on your application. And I think that's a real miss for you. We're a very data-driven office. And so we have tracked would it matter in terms of how successful you are in the program if we were to evaluate you based on what we knew about you on day one, or if you showed up to these events, if you attended any events, even? And in fact, none of those things are relevant to who succeeds in our community. And so what we evaluate is what you put in your application, which, I think says, and hopefully you'll take away, that this recruiting process, which is really like a 2, 3, 4-year journey for many candidates, from when they start thinking about the MBA to when they press submit on their applications, is a real opportunity for you to engage with admissions officers, current students, for you to attend some of these events, but really without being evaluated in a way that I think helps you to understand where you want to be, who you are, to take advantage of what this journey is, and not just think about it as an end result. So to your question, I would say be in touch now. Reach out to us now, attend these events now, and know that if you will, they call it a safe space, to some extent, that we want you to be in touch so that we can help you on this journey, and not just know who you are on the day you press submit on your application.
Well, I think all four of you, with the warmth, the encouragement, the advice that you've shared in the last 45 minutes, it's a great demonstration of that safe space and for candidates to find out more. So we're now going to move, some of you will have links to, well, all of you will have links, viewers, to joining David or Charlotte for individual chats based on what all of you have said. That's a great opportunity. Don't be the stealth candidate. And then after we've had our next panel with the program directors at these 4 schools, there'll be an opportunity to meet with Andrea, Jared, or their colleagues from Ross and from Yale. But again, thank you, all 4 of you, for getting us off to such a great start. David, don't miss that class tonight with Andrew Scott. But Charlotte, Andrea, Jared, and David, it was lovely to have you at Centre Court, and enjoy the chat sessions that follow immediately after.
Thank you so much. Bye.